Good afternoon and welcome to the South Hams Audit and Governance Hearing Subcommittee on Thursday the 4th of September 2025. Can I get the top table to introduce themselves, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Bowen. I'm the Council's legal advisor, and my role today is to advise the panel on any legal matters and to ensure that we follow the standards procedure.
My name's Amelia Bolter, Senior Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to this committee. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Councillor Jed Yardy. I'm a ward councillor for Dartmouth and also a Dartmouth Town Council member.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Alison Nix and I'm the ward member for Brixton and Wembury.
Afternoon, my name is Matt Steele, Councillor for Ivy Ridge East.
The first matter is the appointment of a chairman for today's committee.
I can have nominations for chair, please.
Can I please nominate Councillor Alison Nix?
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Moving on in the agenda this afternoon, we have no reason to divide the agenda. Item 3, declarations of interest. Have we got any declarations of interest?
I'm an acquaintance to Trevor Kirkin, but a friend. Not, I wouldn't say a close friend or anything else.
I wish to declare the second matter on the agenda this afternoon, which is RP 538496, that I was in attendance at the DMC meeting that it pertains to. If there aren't any more declarations of interest, we'll go on to the exclusion of public and press. To consider the following resolution to exclude the public and press. In accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items of business in order to avoid the likely disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act. 5. Consideration of the investigation reports. I believe that we are not going to exclude the public and press from these proceedings this afternoon.
Yes, well, I can just explain for the purpose of the meeting, Chairman. The presumption is that hearings and meetings to consider no breaches will be held in the public arena, so that would entitle public and press to attend. There is something in our constitution that says that if somebody presents us with exceptional circumstances, then we consider whether holding part of the hearing or the whole of the hearing in private. I have not received from any of the parties any such representations that there are exceptional circumstances. I can read out to the meeting what those would be, should they arise, if that would assist, but I haven't had any representations from anybody.
I think that's fine. Thank you, Ms. Mann. That's great. So now we're going to move on to the first of the, to consider the first of the investigation reports for the standards following standards complaint. So the first one is RP 544213. It's a finding of no breach, and the complaint was made by Mr. Tim Pike against Councillor Lorna Yabsley at Kingsbridge Town Council. So we've introduced everybody. I'd just like to introduce Mr. Kirkin. If you could just explain why you're here today, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Trevor Kirkin. I'm one of a small team of independent persons, and that's why I'm here to act as a reasonable and independent person.
Thank you very much. We also have Mr. Mansell, who is the investigating officer, available on Teams if we so require. So the first issue that subcommittee must decide is whether, oh, we've done that.
Can I just confirm for the meeting that the subject member is not attending? She has confirmed that, and I have checked outside, and the complainant is not here. Who will be entitled, following the ruling on a public meeting, to sit in the public gallery, but he's not here either. Just so you know who's here or not.
Thank you very much. So we're here today to consider the investigating officer's report and findings of no breach in relation to the complaint. The subcommittee must decide whether or not to accept the investigating officer's conclusions and then decide to dismiss the complaint, or decide to hold a hearing to make a final decision on whether the councillor has broken the code, and if so, decide whether any sanctions should be applied. And in that case, that matter would be referred for a hearing that will be on a future date. As stated by Mrs. Bowen, the subcommittee will follow the hearing procedure and the councillor complaints process. So we have in front of us the investigating officer's report, the South Hams District Council procedures for dealing with standards complaints and hearings, and other materials, the relevant code of conduct, and any views of the independent person. So this complaint is that the conduct of the subject member in dealing with the complainant and partner was disrespectful, and at the initial assessment stage, the matter was referred for a formal investigation to allow the subject member to respond to the allegations and to decide whether there has been a breach of the code. So after considering the facts, the investigating officer concluded that the subject member's behaviour had not been disrespectful and that there had been no breach of the code. The full reasoning being set out in the investigating officer's report. So could we just ask the independent person, Mr. Kirkin, to ask for your views on this item?
Sure, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think I absolutely agree with the conclusion of the investigation report. It seems that the well-meaning intent of the councillor on this, the subject member on this occasion, went slightly off the rails and didn't end the way she intended it to. But ultimately, there's a he said, she said sort of element to this case, which doesn't lend itself to an objective conclusion. So I'm happy with the findings of the investigation report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkin. Has any of the subcommittee got any questions that they want to ask of Mr. Kirkin, or any procedural issues for Mrs. Bowen?
And we also have Simon Mansell on. We can ask him to join us online. Should you have any questions or clarification from him as well? We just need to get him into the meeting.
No, I think from my view, it is fairly clear what's been set out, that yes, there's, from a subjective point of view, it's being seen differently from either side. Perhaps the subject member could have stepped back sooner, but yes, I would agree. The objective point of view, yes, I would agree with the report.
From my perspective, I agree with the outcome. I would understand here that councillors should not really attend meetings on their own where there is any opportunity for this kind of discussion to take place. So I would advise that councillors should take advice from their clerk in such cases to avoid being caught in such a situation.
Thank you. So I think we're all in agreement that this is a no breach, so that the subcommittee accepts the report findings of no breach for the reasons set out in the investigating officer's report. But we would consider that the councillors and all councillors look for advice from their clerks or other members on the matter of personal safety when attending residents' addresses. Yes, thank you very much. So that is the completion of the first complaint of the hearing today. Thank you very much.
Bend your microphones towards you because some of you are fainter than
We have outside, Chairman, the parties to the next two complaints. We have got the subject member, Councillor Sumner, and his witness for the third matter, if you wanted to proceed to that. And would you like me to read out the process for ahead of, the purpose of the meeting, or just for the breach one?
Sorry, so are you suggesting that we go to 3 and then come back to 2?
No, sorry. It's the same complainant and they're subject member and he's outside. But I'm just saying, would you like me to go through the purpose of the hearing for both matters or just for the breach matter? Because, a bit more detail about how it works.
I think it would be good to have the both for both
Yeah,
matters,
okay,
please,
that's fine.
if you could. So can we invite, do we want to invite the complainant and his party in? Or, no, the subject member, sorry. Good afternoon again, and just to reintroduce the top table, and then Ms. Bowen will be going over some regulations. So could we start with you, Amelia, please?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Amelia Bolter. I'm the Senior Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to this committee. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Councillor Jed Yardy. I am a ward member for Dartmouth.
My name is Councillor Alison Nix. I am today's chairman, and I am the ward member for Brixton and Wembury Ward.
And my name is Matt Steele for Ivy Bridge East.
And Mrs. Bowen.
We met outside. My name's Catherine Bowen. We've been corresponding. And my role is as legal advisor to the subcommittee for legal advice and any procedural processy stuff that they may need to know or have assistance with. Thank you.
And also in the chamber today is the independent person, Mr. Kirkin, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon. My name's Trevor Kirkin. I'm the independent person for both these cases.
Thank you very much. So item 2 on the agenda today is RP 538496, which has a finding of no breach. The complaint was made by Miss F. Goodman against Councillor C. Sumner of Ermington Parish Council. So we've had our introductions and introduced everybody except for the investigating officer, Mr. Simon Mansell, who is available on Teams if we need to clarify any issues with him. We also have the subject member, Councillor Sumner, with us today. the first issue that the subcommittee must decide is whether to exclude the press and public, which we already have done, and we have decided not to do that on this occasion. I'm just gonna ask the legal officer for details on what the exceptional circumstances for that would be.
Yes, just to explain that the process before this point is not in the public domain, but at this point the expectation or the presumption is that it will be held in public. So that means the press and the public can attend or listen to it on live or otherwise on streaming. There are exceptions to that presumption where there are exceptional circumstances, which would override that presumption. For example, they're not exhaustive, but it's to do with circumstances around health, sexual allegations, vulnerable third parties, public order, and the protection of the private life of the party requires in certain circumstances, and also where the complainant is an employee of the council of the subject member. So I have not received any representations on that, and I think you confirmed earlier that you were happy for it to go ahead in public. So the decision earlier, one of the formalities at the beginning of the meeting, that's what was decided by the subcommittee.
Thank you. And have you got anything else to go over before we go into the purpose of the meeting today?
Just for the benefit of the meeting, of anybody that might be listening, it might be useful for me to go through the purpose of the hearings, because sometimes it's a bit confusing to people about what the expectations are for one of these matters. So the council has a duty to consider any complaints about councillor conduct, and that includes parish and town councils within that district of South Hams. And it is a duty, and we have a duty to have a process to deal with that. It's not prescribed. So some councils have they stop at the investigation report stage, but we have made a decision to have hearings to make sure that is more fair and out in the open. So we have followed the adopted process through the initial assessment about whether the matter should be referred for investigation. That's the potential breaches of code, which it was. And then we went to the investigation stage, and the monitoring officer has appointed Mr. Simon Mansell from Cornwall Council to carry out both of those initial assessments and the investigation on his behalf. So the process we're following today, I've sent it to all of the parties involved, is the hearing procedure and our standards complaints process, which is those two stages and various bits and pieces, which we've had a link to before. So there is a limited purpose to a no breach matter. So the subcommittee has to consider the findings given by the investigating officer, and in this case it's no breach. And then they might have to decide whether or not to accept the investigating officer's findings of no breach. But if they don't, then they can say, we don't agree with that, and the matter will be deferred to a different date for a hearing to enable the subject member to make representations, bring along witnesses, and be prepared for that. So that wouldn't be happening today if they made that decision. So as I say, we'll follow the hearing procedure, and it will make its decision based on the materials it has before it. The reports and any other papers are taken as read, and the committee regulates its. The chairman will have the final say on matters of should somebody be allowed to speak, for example, or what have you. That will be a matter for the chair's discretion. So the format of the actual process is that the investigating officer's report and any other written submission and representation are taken as read. The subcommittee, should it wish, can ask clarification questions of the investigating officer or the subject member if present. The subject member may make a statement, and the independent person will be asked for his views if he's present. And then it may retire to consider its decision. But if I give any legal advice when they're retired, then I come back and tell the meeting what it is that I've advised them. I don't take any part in the decision-making process at all. So I think I've covered all the procedural things. The decision will be made today, and I will follow that up. It will come from the chairman. The decision will go through the elements we've gone through just there and sent to all the relevant parties. So that will be yourself and the complainant and the clerk, and Mr. Kirkin and the panel, so they all get a copy of it, and that will be in the public domain, that decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. So if we carry on from there, we've had an investigating officer's report. We all have seen the South Hams procedures for dealing with standards, complaints and hearings, and any other information, including the relevant code of conduct, we have all seen previously to the meeting and as read, and any views of the independent person. So the summary of complaint, which is taken from the investigating officer's report, is that the complainant has concerns about how the subject member is conducting himself in relation to the planning application for her new business. The complainant believes that the subject member is not being honest, open, and has not shown respect in his dealings with the application. Further, the complainant alleges that the subject member ought to have declared an interest in her application because of the proximity of the subject member's property to the planning application site. At the initial assessment stage, the matter was referred for a formal investigation to ascertain whether the subject member did have a declarable interest in the complainant's planning application and whether the subject member had evidenced disrespect and used his position to gain an advantage. The investigating officer's findings were that the outcome is that the subject member has not broken the code of conduct. The investigating officer has concluded that due to the distance of the subject member's property from the application site, and after taking into account different factors, that the subject member was not required to declare an interest in the application. In addition, the investigating officer found that the language used whilst forthright was not disrespectful, and the full reasoning is set out in the investigating officer's report. Mr. Kirkin, if I can ask for your views today, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Might be worth my saying, just for clarity, that as an independent person, I had a say in the whether or not further investigation was pursued, and I agreed that it should be. So apart from that, I've had no input to this prior to today. All I would say is that the investigation report, I think, is completely thorough, and I agree with the conclusion of it, namely that there's not been a breach of the code. But I would endorse the, as you've just recounted, Chairman, the advice of the investigating officer at the end of the report, that the subject member would do well to seek advice before getting too involved in a planning matter, and also that he should take care about the tone and content of emails before sending them. But beyond that, I've nothing to add. I think the conclusion is appropriate. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkin. Has anybody got anything else they want to ask of Mr. Kirkin or the subject member or Mr. Mansell?
No, I think that's clear. We can see all of the facts before us.
Okay, thank you. So at that point, I'm going to stop the meeting so that the subcommittee can retire to discuss before making a decision. Yes, probably. Thank you. And if you could cut the feed for a moment, thank you. Welcome back from that short break. Thank you very much for coming back into the room. So the subcommittee has considered the investigating officer's report and other matters raised today and has made the following decisions. The subcommittee accepts the report findings of no breach for the reasons set out in the investigating officer's report. We would have, however, endorsed the conclusion of Mr. Mansell's report, which will obviously be sent out with the finding. And this is now the end of this matter, which was RP 538496. Thank you very much. So before we move on, we've now got Mr. Mansell has joined us on Teams. Mr. Mansell, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I'm Simon Mansell. I'm the Group Manager Assurance from Cornwall Council, and I do investigations on behalf of the Monitoring Officer for South Hams District Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mansell. So the third item on the agenda today is RP 536652. This has a finding of breach. The complaint was made by Councillor Dennis Onley against Councillor Cliff Sumner of Ermington Parish Council. So we have already had introductions, and Mr. Mansell has just introduced himself. We have Mr. Sumner present today and Councillor Tom's witness for the subject member, and obviously Mr. Mansell, who we've just introduced. The subcommittee is to decide whether to exclude the public, press and public. We've already done that, and the presumption is that the meeting is held in public unless there are exceptional circumstances, which the legal officer has already explained this afternoon, and all members within the room have agreed to those. So the purpose of the hearing is to consider the investigating officer's report regarding the complaint about the subject member, Councillor Sumner, and consider any further representations from the subject member, his witness and the investigating officer. The subcommittee will also consider any views of the independent person. The subcommittee will then make a decision as to whether the subject member has broken the code, and if so, decide whether any sanctions should be applied. And Ms. Bowen has already set out the procedure to be followed. Is there anything else you wish to say?
Yes, just a few batting order procedures I think would be helpful, Chairman. Which I seem to have lost. Oh, there we go. Yeah, just to say the format that this afternoon will take is that the chairman will explain what materials the committee has before it, and explain that the questions will be directed through the chair. The investigating officer's report and other written submissions and representations are taken as read. So you've had the papers, so we don't need to go through them with a fine-tooth comb. We'll just pick out the bits where people find there's exceptions or questions. Mr. Mansell will explain the conclusions reached in his report. He has a right to call any witnesses, but he is not. He has no witnesses. So that's fine. And then we'll ask Councillor Sumner if he requires any clarifications on the investigating officer's report that are reasonable and relevant to the investigation, and we can seek clarification from Mr. Mansell on issues for the panel as well. And then you say what you want to say, and including specific points of disagreement with the report, so we can narrow down where the issues are. Again, the panel can ask questions of you to clarify any issues and further questions. And then Councillor Toms will be able to say what he wants to say, and again, the people can ask you questions. And then Mr. Kirkin is present today, and he will give his views on the investigation officer's conclusions. The subcommittee will probably retire for a little bit longer to discuss, because we have more material to discuss to reach its decision, but that's their discretion. And as I said before, I will go with them to give any legal advice if necessary. But neither Amelia nor I take part in any shape or form with regards to the decision. We're just here in a supportive capacity. And then the decisions that the panel can make, I should say subcommittee, but are they can accept the investigating officer's conclusions the code has been broken, in which case they will consider what sanctions to apply, or they may decide that they don't agree with the findings, that the code hasn't been broken. One or more of the elements in the report has not been broken, and again they will give reasons for that. And at the end of the process, I will again, there will be a verbal decision today, and I will do a written decision that will be circulated to the parties we discussed earlier. And perhaps one more element just to clarify that all of the decisions and the assessments are done on the balance of probabilities. Is it more probable than not that it occurred? It's not a courtroom test. We don't have those sort of powers. And then these sort of things, they have the panel have an inquisitorial brief rather than an adversarial one. So I hope that's clarified various matters. So I think that's me done, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So the materials we have to consider are the investigating officer report, which was taken as read by all parties. Any further material information provided by the subject member or the investigating officer, the councillor response form from the subject member, the Ermington Parish Council Code of Conduct, the hearing procedure and councillor complaint process, and any views of the independent person. So I'd like to now ask Mr. Mansell to introduce the report covering the focus of the investigation and findings with reason.
Thank you very much, Chair. There was two parts to the investigation, and the first one was whether the subject member had an interest with regards to being a member of the church electoral roll. This wouldn't be a disclosable pecuniary interest, which would need to be registered, but would still be something that could create an interest if anything concerning the church came before the parish council. In January, the matter regarding the church clock came before the parish council, and as I've noted in my report, Councillor Sumner resigned his position on the church electoral roll before the vote. However, and I'll come on to the more on the however in a moment. One of the things that is nuanced in the code of conduct is that immediately resigning a position doesn't necessarily remove the person from that role. There used to be considered a lot of times by what was Standards for England and the First Tier Tribunal, and there was a case in Scotland in 2019 concerning a group called Save Our Spin, which was relating to wind turbines, where a member there had resigned from the body, but was still found in breach of the code when they proposed objecting to some turbines in their local area. When the vote came, I think it's a found fact that Councillor Sumner was involved in the matter, and he then would have breached the code of conduct. I would like to point out to the committee that this is a very nuanced area of the code, and Councillor Sumner is a new councillor, and it is something that he may not well be aware of. I do cover it in my training when I do the training in Cornwall, but that's primarily through my own experiences of having dealt with these things over several years. And it's often that parish councillors may not pick up on this immediately. So I have put that in the summary of my report, and I would ask that the committee take that into consideration when they retire. I would also like to mention that there was in the response from Councillor Sumner, he mentioned his rights about religious freedoms, but that is not affected by the decision. This was about his ability to vote before a matter on the parish council, and it doesn't affect religious freedoms in any way, shape or form. On the second part of the code, there was the email which was sent to the clerk. The terminology used within it, which members will have seen, and I won't necessarily repeat for you, it came to case, would a reasonable person, in consideration of all the facts, think that the terminology used in the email was acceptable to send to the clerk? Now, within this, there is the point that clerks are there to serve the council as a whole and designed to be independent, and they have to be very neutral when dealing with their own councillors and and other councils, and such as in this case dealing with South Hams District Council. To use that terminology towards the clerk, I believed a reasonable person would have found it unacceptable. And again, I have mentioned in there that there is an expectation, as some of members who've been members for a while will know, that members are required to have thicker skins, and this was actually cited in the court case of Heason versus the Local Government Ombudsman for Wales. It went in, it covered that in quite some depth. Again, I think this was terminology used by a member that was perhaps inexperienced. I am aware that Councillor Sumner only became a councillor quite recent before these events. So again, I would ask that the panel takes that into consideration when they retire. Though, in summary, I do believe that the interest should have been declared, and I do believe that the terminology used in the email was a breach of the code. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mansell. Have any of the panel got any questions for Mr. Mansell?
I have. So I'm reading the email now, and the reference to the terminology that I think you refer to. Do you think there's any possibility that that email, probably written quite quickly, could be misinterpreted to be not to the standard that we expect? I can easily see how, if there were two words added, that it could come out in a very different sense. So I'm just asking whether the terminology, sometimes I write emails really quickly, and I can put in bad punctuation, and I can miss out the odd word, and quite clearly this one, the way it's written, doesn't sound very good. Is there a benefit of the doubt here that the wording could have been quickly written and could be read two ways? No, interesting.
I think taking it as was advised by Mrs. Bolden, was that the fact that with regards to the way that these things are considered, it is on the balance of probabilities rather than beyond reasonable doubt. And adapting that to the reasonable person, then looking at this on the balance of probabilities, would using that terminology potentially be a breach of the code? Then yes, I completely agree. I think we've all sent emails in haste that we've sometimes regretted, but you know, there comes a time, if it is looked at through this process, then is it a potential breach of the code? I believe so.
Thank you, Mr. Mansell. Councillor Steele, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mansell. So in saying in your report that the subject member, he had mentioned to the clerk in the December meeting about his membership of the electoral roll. So is that not, I guess, considered enough? You would say it should be more clear in terms of declaring that interest.
Yes, it's normally required that any interest that a member had would need to be declared at the start of the meeting, and in this case, it would have, I believe that the member should have declared the interest and left the meeting as well. Like I said, this is a very nuanced area, because I believe Councillor Sumner, and to some degree, rightly felt that he had left his membership of the church electoral roll, so therefore was clear of the interest. And it's only through experience that I know that in the past people have been found in breach of the code for leaving, then immediately voting on something. As I think I put in there, it did happen a lot in the early noughties, where people would resign from something and then rejoin, you know, a few weeks later. I do appreciate in this case that Councillor Sumner didn't rejoin the electoral roll, but it has to be taken on the facts on the day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have, before I put the floor over to Councillor Sumner, I have a question for you, Councillor Sumner, which is, we've talked quite a lot about training. When you became a councillor, have you had any code of conduct training or initial councillor training for the parish council?
None whatsoever.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Sumner, I'm referring to the email. Did the email that you wrote to Margaret Grafton, is that an accurate? Is that interpretation? Is that accurate, that email?
I admit to writing the words, but the words are obviously written by me, but they've been taken completely out or not been put into the context. For example, the reason that I wrote those words was because another case where I wrote to Drew Powell.
I'm sorry, Councillor Sumner, could you just answer the question that's been asked of you?
Oh,
Well,
sorry, Chairman. I wonder if before we get into questions of Councillor Sumner, whether he ought to put his his case or what he wants to say first. It might be easier, and he might be covering those issues anyway, rather than preempt what you're going to say type thing.
yes,
So,
okay.
it might be a cleaner way of dealing with it, Chairman.
Absolutely, thank you very much for that. If you'd like to put your case forward now, Councillor Sumner, thank you very much.
Okay, my first question or statement to Mr. Mansell is that I didn't resign from the electoral roll just before the meeting. As soon as I became a councillor, I resigned from the church electoral roll on becoming a councillor. So it wasn't purely for this, because that topic wasn't even that had come up then. So I believe that is an incorrect assumption on your part. But secondly, could you please explain to me what, in your last paragraph before your decision, you say that I have broken sections 8.1, 5A, 4A, 4H of the Code of Conduct. Which Code of Conduct?
If I may, that would be the Code of Conduct for the Parish Council.
Can I please give the chairman the Code of Conduct for Ermington Parish Council, dated the 22nd of, dated 2022? Could you please, Madam Chairman, read section 8.1?
Perhaps it might be easier to ask Mr. Mansell to clarify what the sections are.
No, this is fundamental.
I know. You're saying that Mr. Mansell has quoted the wrong sections.
No,
Right,
I'm not
okay.
saying
I thought
wrong
that's what you
sections.
said. My apologies.
Could you read out section 8.1, please?
As a councillor, I undertake code of conduct training provided by the council. Sorry. As a councillor, I undertake code of conduct training provided by the council.
So, what have I broken there? What section? Could you read out section 4A?
Sorry, 4A. 5A.
No, there is. It says 4A. From after 8.1, it says 4A. 5A, 4A, and 4H.
Well, there isn't a 5A.
No, that's quite true.
or 4A or 4H?
No, there isn't. Mr. Mansell has gone on the web and just taken a document off the web, very unprofessionally, an outdated document. He hasn't even checked the date on the bottom of it, which it says the document that he's used is dated. It's dated 2017 with a comment on it that it will be reviewed annually in September. That code of conduct practice is reviewed every September. In fact, at the council meeting this September, it was put up for review. So Mr. Mansell has just taken a document off the web and found me guilty on it.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Mr. Mansell, could you respond, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Like everybody who undertakes these investigations, we're reliant on the internet. I have just been on to Google, typed in Urban Parish Council Members Code of Conduct, and the only code of conduct that I can find online is from 2017. Well, I appreciate the comments raised by Councillor Sumner. He has had the opportunity to raise these prior to the hearing, and he even had the opportunity to raise them after the initial assessment. At no point has this been raised with me that the code of conduct is out of date, and there is the expectation that parish councils, if they do amend their code, would put the current codes online. I do apologise to the panel for that, but I have to work with the information that I can find available.
Mr. Mansell, have you been, if you type in the Ermington Parish Council website, it will then direct you to parish documents, where then you can go to the code of conduct, and it will show you the date, the 2022 document. You just cannot go on the web and take off any document.
I'm sorry, Councillor Sumner, and I appreciate your concern about this, but I have just done that, and I have gone back to the 2017 document. I'm not disputing that there is maybe another document online, but it's not one that I can find readily available.
No research. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mansell. Ms. Bowen, you wanted to say something.
Just to say that the investigating officer's report has quoted the version that he has seen. However, he's also stated what those provisions are. So the nature of the provision has been stated, as well as the number, and it is clear to me, reading the report, what those breaches are, irrespective of the numbers. Would that be right, Mr. Mansell?
Yes, quite correct. While we were speaking, we do amend our code in Cornwall, and it can go forwards from one provision to another, but would that provision as what was 8.1, however that is carried forward in the new code, what would that now be? Like I said, I do apologise to the panel and to Councillor Sumner, but I've just tried again to find the version he has, and I've been unable to.
Well, I'm surprised, but can I then ask another question? Could you tell me, as regards this complaint, have you spoken to the parish clerk about it?
No, I didn't speak to the parish clerk, and the reason I did, if I could finish.
Have you spoken? No, I've just asked a question.
Councillor Sumner, you have asked a question.
I've been given the answer no.
Please allow Mr. Mansell to complete his sentence. Thank you very much.
As part of the investigation, I contact the subject member, which in this case was yourself first. I received several responses from you over the course of several weeks, and normally I am reliant on what responses I get back from the member as to where I will then take things with regards to investigation. I'm not aware at any point I was directed towards the clerk, but you did know the allegations in the initial assessment. However, I would stand by the fact that there was still a potential breach of the code by failing to declare the interest. And I don't see how the clerk would have altered that.
Have you
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mansell. Councillor Sumner, if you'd like to continue.
Yeah, have you spoken to anybody on the Ermington Parish Council about whether the allegations are true or not?
Well, I'm sorry, Councillor Sumner, but in reading your responses, I took them to take it that they were founded. I mean, you have just said that you wrote the email, so I can't see how that could not be true. And I have also, you've also said that you were a member of the electoral roll, so I don't see how that could not be true.
No, I haven't said I was a member of the electoral roll. I said when I became a councillor on the 3rd of December, I came off the electoral roll, which is different to you saying that I came off the electoral roll in January before the vote on the church. As soon as I became a councillor, I came off the church electoral roll. You have made the wrong assumption.
I would disagree, because it's still only a matter of weeks before you became a councillor and you left and you then voted on the church clock matter. It wouldn't.
Just a
no,
moment.
no. If I may finish, please, Councillor Summer. Generally, it was considered by standards for England that a run-out period of 2 to 3 months would be required before that a person was free of that interest. So the fact you resigned in December would not have made any difference to my outcome.
I'm sorry, but I could not. I was not a councillor until December the 3rd, so I then resigned my position. Then this came up on the agenda for January, which I didn't know about until later on. I then stated my position at that meeting, and was guillotined by the chairman. And there are other members on that committee, on the council, who are also church members, who have not been singled out like this. So I think the comment about the church is irrelevant. It's such a small point on this whole matter. The first matter is that you have taken the wrong the wrong conduct to monitor me by. Secondly, you have now gone on to the nastiness of a memo that's your decision of nasty without asking me the context of it.
If I could stop you, if I may, Chair.
Please, can I finish?
Councillor Sumner, Councillor Sumner, I think we've heard the facts and we're continuing to go back over the same thing again. We understand what you're saying. We have read Mr. Mansell's report and also all the things he's covered, although, as Councillor Ms. Bowen said, were not under those areas, those numbers he's given me, but they are all still in the Code of Conduct.
But
so...
Okay.
So
but we've now moved on to the point that Mr. Mansell has made about the email. Now, the reason for this email is because I was having an email discussion with Drew Powell of South Hams District Council, and I asked him 4 simple questions. Now, it took me emails. I've got it, the dates here. I had to write to him 4 times, emails, before he would give me simple yes-no answers as to whether someone had been allowed access to a South Hams District Council premises. He then, when I pointed out to him that a business had registered its address with South Hams District Council, where they had no lease, they didn't have the change of use to use that building.
I'm sorry, Councillor Sumner, what's this got to do with the complaint?
It's to do with the point about the nastiness.
Well, could you keep it to the complaint about the email that's in?
That's what it is.
In the pack.
Yes, it is. The reason the nastiness was meant, I then wrote to Drew Powell and said to him, if he didn't give me the proper answers, I would take the matter to the media. And I got an answer straight back. After writing 4 times to him and also complaining to him that a business that didn't have a lease with South Hams, didn't have the change of use of South Hams premises, didn't have a license to carry out that type of business on those premises, all I was asking him was, did those people, did he know that it was their South Hams responsibility to go to the company's house and say that they'd committed an offence? Drew Powell then sent me on a wild goose chase, saying, "You go back to company's house." Company's house then said to me, "Sorry, we can't deal with you. We've got to deal with South Hams." Drew Powell knew that he was just kicking the can down the road, and so my nastiness was saying I would take it to the media if he didn't give me an answer. As soon as I said I will take it to the media, he gave me the answer I asked for. That was what the context of nastiness.
Okay, but it doesn't. The actual email has been written as we've seen. So actually, the background is, I don't know the wording for it, but it's not relevant in this case. Is there anything else you wish to say before? Anything else that you wish to bring to the panel's notice?
Yes, I would now. We've gone through the stage 2. We've gone through the email, which you won't seem to consider. I would like to go through stage 1 now. When the complaint was sent to Mr. Fairburn, he passed it on for a stage 2 investigation. Do you know what the South Hams councillor complaint procedure is? If a complaint comes through which involves disclosable pecuniary interest, what does it do? What should Mr. Fairburn have done?
Ms. Bowen.
There are several types of interest. If it is a disclosable pecuniary interest, it is a matter for the police because it's potentially a criminal.
That is exactly it. It was the answer. The question on the complaint form is it a disclosable pecuniary interest? It was put yes. So Mr. Fairburn should not have bought this whole thing. We shouldn't be here. It should have gone to the police.
If I could interject there, please, Chair, if it may help members.
Yes, Mr. Mansell, thank you.
I deal with several hundred complaints a year with regard on this subject, and it is often that complaints are made with using the wrong provisions of the code, and it is a requirement for the monitoring officer to consider which part of the codes may have been breached. And I believe that I set out very early on when we were discussing what sort of interest had arisen, that there was no question of the interest regarding the church electoral roll being a disclosable pecuniary interest. And I think I do not believe it was incumbent on the monitoring officer to take the word of the complainant, and as should happen is the monitoring officer should consider the complaint and then process it according to what the complaint is, not what provisions have been potentially cited in it.
If the monitoring officer uses the term council, which he did, the parochial church council, that is a body which I should, well, I'm not saying I should, but he should have said this man is a member or was a member of a body which, together with the complaint, should be a police matter, not an individual matter.
It's not a disclosable pecuniary interest being a member of a group or body of that nature. It doesn't fall within one of the provisions as set out in the disclosable pecuniary interest regulations.
Well, why are we here?
Chairman, may I interject? The stage one procedure is, to put it in layman's terms, is to see whether a complaint that has been lodged with the council, which has a duty to consider, has got legs and should be referred for investigation or not. There are several criteria which must be satisfied, like they're a councillor at the time.
Pardon, Miss Bowen, could you allow Miss Bowen to speak, please?
Yes, the procedure is that it's stage one. There are certain criteria that need to be satisfied. For example, is the member a councillor at the time of the complaint, and so on and so forth. And is the behaviour or complaint that's been alleged capable of being a breach of the code? So, as Mr. Mansell has said, the complainants don't necessarily have the right language to say what that which part of the code it should be in. We look at the general area of it, but if they put the wrong category on their description of their complaint, we will interpret it to say if it's a disrespect complaint and it should have been a different type of thing, then that's what will be investigated. So that part of the process is to see whether or not the matter should be dismissed at that point or whether it should go for further investigation. And to get to that point, there are further procedures to follow. We have an assessment subcommittee made of 3 different members, and we consult the independent person to see whether or not it is reasonable to go on the basis of Mr. Mansell's initial assessment, yes, that there does seem to be potential breaches of the code, to look into those further. And the panel, a different panel, and Mr. Kirkin will give their views, and the monitoring officer then decides whether or not it should go for investigation, which in this case it did. So it wasn't referred on the basis of a disclosable pecuniary interest, it was referred on a different type of interest. There are different types of interest. So there was an interest of some sort that needed to be clarified. And at that point, we need you as a subject member complained about to give your side of the story. So that's why, so we've got a complaint, we think it might have something in it, therefore it goes for investigation, and the investigating officer appointed on behalf of our monitoring officer to do so, then contacted you for your side.
That was for stage 2.
No.
I'm talking about stage 1.
So am I.
No, I was not asked for any information on stage 1.
No, we don't contact the councillors.
You just said I did. I would.
Okay, just let me rephrase that then. For stage 1, we rely on the complaint that is submitted to see, let me use the expression, to see if it's got legs, to see if there's something in it that needs referring for investigation. If the answer at that point is yes, then I notify the councillor and the clerk concerned to say we referred it for investigation, and say that the investigating officer will contact you for your side of the story at stage 2. So we do not, in any complaint, on to stage 1, consult or notify the complainant, because it may well go away at that point. The subject member, because, for example, there might not have been a councillor at the time, and it's just our process, an adopted process, and that's what we do. I follow the process.
But that process does say that if it's a disclosable pecuniary interest on the complaint, it goes directly to the police. So why was it dealt with?
Councillor Sumner, I think what we're saying here is that the complainant said it was a disclosable pecuniary interest, but when it went to the monitoring officer, they realised it wasn't. And so it was investigated under stage 1 with the panel, not as a disclosable pecuniary interest, but an interest of another type.
But the monitoring officer claimed I was on a body, parochial church body, which is something different. I've never been on the church body, but the monitoring officer claimed it in his statement on his stage 1 investigation. He's got council, the church council.
Chairman, at stage 1, what the assessment officer or the monitoring officer, whoever's looking at the matter, goes on the basis of what the wording is in the complaint. The purpose of the investigation is to get to the bottom of that, to correct those issues, to get the councillor's side. So if somebody said, I'm a member of X body and they're a member of Y body, that will be cleared up during the investigation. That's the whole point of it. So
why wasn't I asked then?
You were at stage 2, you had an opportunity to
No,
comment.
you just said at stage 1, it will be cleared. The question will be asked. I was asked no questions with regard to stage 1.
I'm not making myself very clear. At stage 1, we don't consult the subject member. We go on the basis of the wording in the complaint. Has that potentially broken the code? If the answer to that test is yes, then it goes for an investigation to stage 2, at which point we contact the councillor concerned.
But your own procedure says it should has gone to the police and not to stage 2.
Councillor Sumner, no, we've just said that unfortunately the complainant said yes to the wrong thing. However, the monitoring officer, when they took it on board, they realised it wasn't a disclosable pecuniary interest and so didn't send it to the police. They assessed it under the correct interest guidelines. Mr. Kirkin, have you got anything to say about that initial assessment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. We've had a comprehensive discussion, I think, and starting from Mr. Mansell's very comprehensive investigation report. Downstream of that, and I think underlying all of that, rather, I would conclude that the whole thing's about an unfortunate escalation of routine business that's gone a little off the rails. Two things I'd particularly I've focused on is one is, as Mr. Mansell has made clear, the interest on resignation doesn't die there. It has a life. It goes on for a period of time after that. And more generally, it seems to me that on both counts, the first one being the declaration of interest and or use of position to gain advantage, and the second one, treating others with respect in relation to the email, and bringing thereby the office of councillor into disrepute. The important thing is the spirit, to my mind, of the Ermington Parish Council Code of Conduct, rather than the precise paragraph or subparagraph or section. It's the spirit. And I'm convinced, having heard this discussion now, and indeed having read and reread Simon Mansell's report, that it's the spirit of the code of conduct that has not been followed. And so I believe there has indeed been a breach of the code of conduct.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkin. Have members of the panel got any questions for either Mr. Mansell, Mr. Kirkin, or Councillor Sumner before I bring in Councillor Toms?
So I'd like to go back to my initial question, which is, you've stated that the email was written by you. Do you believe that you've written the email in haste? Was it written, is it a fair, accurate representation of what you want to say?
It was written possibly in haste, but it was written as a result of asking Mr. Powell the same 4 questions 4 times and not getting an answer, and also asking Mr. Powell why South Hams District Council had allowed a business that had no contact with the company, with South Hams, to register an address with South Hams Council.
Yeah, I've understood that part of it. So you're not referring to the fact that there could have been if you'd added 2 words or something like that to this, it could have meant something completely different, because I don't read that. As I read this, this doesn't read pleasantly. And you've not indicated to me that you would have reread this and said, oh, I made a mistake, I should have added more words, or something like that. You haven't done that.
I have another email which does state that by the word nasty, I mean the media. But I've not submitted that.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Okay, no, I think we've gone through everything a number of times. I think it's clear what's been put. I'm not sure if the word nasty is the most important word in that email, which is why we are here looking at that email. It's how you describe Margaret, which is really more question. And as you say, the facts are there. Noted your comments. I think maybe there are things we could put in our recommendations about updating the code of conduct, but facts of the case, I think we have here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Still. I've just got one question. You haven't had any training since becoming a councillor, but you have signed your initial, I don't know quite what it's called,
Yes.
but the document
Yes.
you have to sign to legally become
to sit on the council.
to sit on the
Yes.
council. You have signed that.
Yes.
Acceptance. Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. Councillor Toms.
Can I just, before I ask my questions to Councillor Toms, can I just make two other points about this complaint, which I believe are relevant? If you look at the complaint at the top, the first couple of points, it accuses me of bullying and troublemaking. Then on the same level, by Councillor Onley, he says he doesn't know how he can expect to handle my views. So those points are, he's complaining about expectations rather than actions. At the very end of the complaint, he writes, "Thank you," in anticipation. Now, by the very same terms that you have judged my term using nasty, what does "thank you" in anticipation imply? To me, it implies collusion and predetermination by the very same terminology that you've used to judge my term nasty.
Chair, we're not considering a complaint against the complainant at this point.
No.
So,
You're considering the complaint against me, and that is the opening statements of the complaint and the closing statements of the complaint, if you look closely at it. And Mr. Mansell has made no reference to either of those points in his judgment. He's not.
Councillor Sumner, that's not relevant to this this complaint at all. So could you move on to your next point, please?
I thought we were talking about the judgment by Mr. Mansell of me on that, against that complaint.
Judgment is an investigative report.
Yes.
There's no judgment.
But there is no investigation of those complaints. He hasn't asked anybody whether there is any bullying. He hasn't asked anybody whether there's any misbehaviour. He's just said, "There's at the bottom, thank you."
Councillor Sumner, that isn't. We're not looking at that today. It's not within the realms of this complaint. So you said that there was a second point that you wish to speak to us about.
Well, I can ask the questions of my witness, can't I? Later on.
Fine, thank you. So you haven't got a second point to bring.
Well, those are the 2 points that I did make. The opening statement of the complaint against me and the closing statement of the complaint against me.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Toms, if you'd like to make a statement with relation to this complaint.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just for background, I have in the past been on Ermington Parish Council for some 30 years, 20 years as chairman. I have also been involved in code of conduct issues politically in the region, and I do know how code of conduct committees work, and I know that nobody goes on them to point score. Everybody is on them to work hard and to look at the facts. So I absolutely accept that. I am slightly concerned because I've never come across the issue whereby people can make very serious allegations, which has been made against Councillor Sumner, and the allegation was pecuniary interest, a very serious allegation, which we've heard should lead directly to a police investigation.
Councillor Toms, yes, we have already covered that and said that was obviously the mistake of the complainant not understanding what the issue was. However, the complaint has been handled under the appropriate headings and not as a pecuniary interest.
Yes, I perfectly understand that. I absolutely understand it. But it does lead on to my question. Can I question anybody? So I don't know this actually whether I can ask any questions or whether I just make a comment.
You would normally come along to give some support in particular areas, and you would say what that was to the panel. Then they can ask you questions, or you can seek clarification from Simon Mansell. But if we can keep it to specific questions,
absolutely.
please.
We can keep it pointed. We've heard from the independent inspector that the inspection originally onto the complaints against Councillor Sumner was detailed and very, very thorough and very accurate, and which is what we would expect and want from a body like this. We have then heard, and this is not criticism, we have then heard that Mr. Mansell has looked at an old code of conduct. As I understand it, and please correct me, Mr. Mansell, if I'm wrong, there was no contact with the clerk, at which point that could have been clarified as the new code of conduct. So in the paperwork that's been sent to Councillor Sumner and is in front of you, large chunks of that are factually incorrect. We have also had the complaint, a very serious complaint about Councillor Sumner with pecuniary interests, which has been amended because the complaint was wrong. But that was the complaint. Now, there are issues that I would like to raise which are absolutely crucial to this whole discussion of Councillor Sumner and Ermington Parish Council. They are absolutely crucial, but I consider there's safeguarding issues and that should not be in public.
Can I ask for legal advice on that, or Mr. Mansell? Ms. Bowen?
I couldn't say first. With regards to any issues, but maybe safeguarding, I asked Councillor Sumner for his response to the complaint in April. He gave me a reasonable response to the complaint, but at no point was anything relating to safeguarding raised with me at that time. So therefore, I have nothing to go on with regards to the consideration of this complaint that may be linked to that subject.
I haven't really got anything to add to that. We don't know what the issue is and whether it pertains to this complaint. If it's not been brought up during the investigation stage, then it's a new issue.
It's extremely serious, this issue, absolutely crucial and central to the issue. And I hate to say, but if thorough investigation from the monitoring officer, from Mr. Mansell, and picked up by the independent, if the thorough investigation had taken 2 minutes of investigating, they would have picked this up themselves. It concerns a person, and I feel their issues would be irresponsible to put it into the public domain. And I would hope that I could bring this up. It is under one of your. It is under one of your
Councillor Toms,
titles.
can I stop you
Yes,
there?
certainly.
And I'm going to ask for a time out, and I'm going to stop the recording at that point, please.
Thank you. It was in one of the lists read out. Health issues, safe.
Okay, thank you very much for that time out. We have had a discussion with our legal, our monitoring officer. Although that what we've just discussed doesn't form part of this complaint, however, we do suggest as a matter of urgency you bring that forward as a separate matter. It should be towards safeguarding, and Ms. Bowen would signpost you to the correct people to say to that. So on that item, is there anything else relevant to this complaint that you wish to say, Councillor Toms?
Thank you, Chairman. But I could say also that none of the councillors that have recently come on to Ermington Parish Council, none of them have had training or been offered training. And I would like to reiterate the point that was made, one of the multiple mistakes seemingly made by Mr. Mansell on his investigation, where he says and implies, again, an implied, like the word nasty implied, and I'm sure anybody listening would have taken the view that Councillor Sumner resigned his position with the church and then voted, which on pressing, Mr. Mansell has agreed that actually there was a couple of months between it, and without any sort of training. Sorry, that was correct, wasn't it? Sorry, Madam Chairman, that was correct, wasn't it?
Councillor Mansell, Mr. Mansell, sorry.
I did say even if it was the case that he had resigned in December, it was still I still would have found a breach of the code. That was the wording that I used.
Sorry, I was pushing. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I thought I had to hold it. Sorry, technology. That was not, and I'm sure if there's a recording and it can be looked at, that is not what was said. It was said later. That was not the original. The original implied that Councillor Sumner resigned and voted. That was what the thing. And regarding the issue that we've discussed and you've discussed in camera, I'm sorry, my view will stay as that is an absolute integral part, because the management of Ermington Parish Council have issued this for Councillor Sumner as a pure vendetta issue, and it all resolves around the issues we were discussing, which are incredibly serious, and nobody has picked it up, because nobody who has done detailed, thorough research.
Councillor Toms, I have to. That's your opinion, and I have to. I'm sorry, Councillor Toms. It's not relevant.
Lent to any of the officers checking with the clerk, which would have solved the other issue.
That is not relevant to this complaint, and if it was that serious, then you should take that forward to the correct body. That is not to be discussed under this issue while we are here today, which is a specific complaint. That matter needs to be taken forward to the correct body if it is as serious as you say it is. And that is not down to us to do the investigation. It is down to the parish council to take that forward. We will support that in any way we need to. However, at this point, it is not relevant to what we're discussing today. So if you've got nothing further to say on this matter, then we will take another time out to make a decision and to conclude on this matter that we're discussing today.
With respect, the issue that we were talking about pertains totally to the previous parish council and was in control.
I'm sorry, Councillor Toms, but if it was that important and it pertained to this matter, then Councillor Sumner could have brought it forward to this matter. Is that correct, Ms. Spell?
Yes, I think we just need to step back a bit from this. This council, the district council, has a duty to look at any standards complaint laid before it as an allegation of a breach of the code of conduct. Other issues surrounding parish councils, the way they act, the decisions they make, relationships between the officers of the council and the members are not something, unless it's the clerk could actually complain about councillors because their member behaviour, but we don't. It's not that we won't look at something, it's we do not have the powers to deal with those sorts of issues. All we can look at are allegations that certain provisions of a code of conduct have been broken, and then do an investigation if necessary, and then there's an outcome. We can't do some of those wider issues you were referring to. And they
Yes,
weren't part of the
No,
complaint.
no, I won't take up time with you, but with respect, this code of conduct complaint about Councillor Sumner comes from the chairman of Ermington Parish Council, who has, over some time, against parishioners and people on the council, has continually used his position on the council to project things which are not, and this has resulted in this. And if Councillor Sumner's original earlier representation to the monitoring officers at South Hams been taken seriously, this matter would never have reached this level, and this matter would not be here today. And it is a core point.
Okay, thank you for your opinion and thank you very much for speaking up to us today. Mr. Mansell, did you have something to say on that matter?
I would only say that as in undertaking investigations on behalf of the monitoring officer, it's only the facts of the complaint that would be looked at, and that is whether the subject member breached the code of conduct. And on that, the subject member was given ample opportunity to respond to the complaint, which he did. He responded in writing. No of these wider issues were raised, and he also then later emailed his interests into the monitoring officer, so he was aware of the need to register of interest. I do take the point about training, though, and I think that's a valid one, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mansell. So at that point, I think, again, we're going to time out so that the panel can make a decision on this complaint. So if we can stop the recording there, please. Right, welcome back. Thank you very much for giving us some time to discuss the matter today. So the subcommittee has considered the papers that it has before us and taken into account the representations that we've heard from today from the subject member, Councillor Toms, Mr Kirkin and Mr Mounsell. And we've made the following decision. Whilst we understand that you are a new councillor, we finding the facts is that this is a breach as summarised as those set out in the investigating officer's report. We accept that the references in the report are not clear. However, the spirit of the code and the provision of the code are clear and written appropriately. So the subject member has broken the code in relation to the declaration of interests and not declaring a registrable interest. A registerable interest, and that the timing of the resignation did not change the investigating officer's decision. On the matter of treating others with respect and bringing office of councillor into disrepute, the email was disrespectful in this matter. So the sanctions that we would like to put in place is that the whole of Ermington District Parish Council take code of conduct training as the outcome. So not specific, but the whole of the council. If you've got new councillors, etc., who haven't had the training, then that is an appropriate sanction on this. And that is the end of this complaint matter today and the closure of business today. Yeah, that's
Just to
it.
say, Chairman, they will be followed up by a written summary to all parties.
There is no more sanctions on Councillor Sumner from what you said.
That is correct.